What happened when you started dating your best friend? Story 1. I tried to end things with my FWB, but we moved in together instead. My best friend Sarah and I have this running joke about being professionally single. We'd been each other's wingman for years, complaining about dating apps over cheap takeout. So when we both got out of relationships last spring, the friends with benefits thing just happened. We set one rule. If either of us caught feelings, we'd end it immediately to save the friendship. It worked great for about 6 months. We'd hook up, then immediately go back to roasting each other's Netflix choices. The problem started during one of our usual Wednesday movie nights. We were watching some terrible horror sequel, and I was half asleep when she made this comment about the killer's motivations being more complex than most people she'd dated. Without thinking, still drowsy, I mumbled, "Love you too," like it was part of our conversation. The silence was deafening. She paused the movie and just stared at me. I scrambled to explain I was responding to the movie somehow, but we both knew that made zero sense. She said it was fine, but something shifted. Oof! That instant fog silence when words outpace your brain. I could practically hear the friendship alarm blaring in both of your heads. The hookup stopped immediately. For the next 2 weeks, I convinced myself I could fix it by acting extra platonic. I started mentioning attractive co-workers during our hangouts and asking her opinion on my dating app photos. The weirdest part was she played along, even suggesting I swipe right on this girl from her yoga class. Nothing says, "I'm totally fine," like aggressively seeking your ex-hookup's dating advice while your friendship slowly suffocates under all that forced normalcy. Everything came to a head at our friend Mike's birthday party. I'd been there maybe an hour when Sarah walked in with some guy I'd never seen before. She introduced him as someone she'd been talking to, and I watched them share inside jokes all night. Seeing her laugh at his stories while barely acknowledging me felt like getting punched. I cornered her in Mike's kitchen around midnight and just blurted out that I was confused about what we were doing. She got this look I'd never seen before. Not angry, just exhausted. She told me the past 2 weeks had been awful because I was treating her like a stranger while pretending everything was normal. She said she missed her best friend and didn't understand why I was pushing her away when she was trying to give me space to figure things out. Finally tearing off the polite mask in a crowded kitchen. Why are revelations always surrounded by half-empty Solo cups and fridge light? That's when it hit me. She thought I was trying to let her down easy. I'd been so focused on proving I didn't have feelings that I'd convinced her I was rejecting feelings she was developing too. We both just stood there in Mike's kitchen, realizing we'd been having completely different conversations for 2 weeks. We left the party and spent 3 hours in her car talking through everything. Turns out we'd both been catching feelings around the same time, but were too scared to admit it because of our stupid rule. She brought that guy to make me jealous, and I'd been acting weird to convince myself I didn't care. 3 hours in a parked car. The unofficial setting for every friendship to more upgrade conversation. We decided to try actually dating, but agreed to take it slow since we'd already messed up the transition once. That was 7 months ago. We still argue about movie choices and rate each other's dating app photos. Now it's just for friends who ask for advice. We're moving in together next month, and honestly, breaking our rule was the best mistake we ever made. Professionally single, retired. Honestly, the whole catching feelings disaster turned into the sweetest love story. Story 2. I slept with my best friend's ex, and it destroyed our entire friend group. I learned the hard way that dating your best friend can blow up every other friendship you have. My 2 closest friends had been together for 3 years. We were basically a trio, went everywhere together, shared inside jokes, the whole thing. Then out of nowhere, they split. He kept saying she changed and got weird. She wouldn't talk about it, just said she was done. Our friend group chat went dead because nobody knew whose side to take. 2 weeks later, she called me at like 1 a.m, absolutely losing it. I could barely understand what she was saying through the crying. I drove over and she finally told me he'd been checking her phone behind her back and tracking her location. We stayed up talking until the sun came up. When I was leaving, she hugged me goodbye and it just turned into something else. We both froze afterward. I mumbled something about how that couldn't happen again and left feeling sick to my stomach. But it did happen again, and again. Within a couple weeks, we were basically sneaking around like teenagers. The guilt was brutal. I'd lie awake at night rehearsing how I'd tell him, then chicken out every time. I started messing up at work because I couldn't focus on anything. Oh God, the guilt insomnia is so real. Lying there just practicing the worst conversation of your life over and over. 3 weeks in, he called to vent about missing her. He kept saying she'd come crawling back once she realised how good she had it. When he joked that she was probably just PMSing through the whole breakup, I almost lost it. I came so close to blurting out everything that I had to hang up and go throw up. The whole thing exploded because of technology, which looking back makes perfect sense. He'd put a location tracker on her phone months earlier and never removed it after they broke up. One Thursday night she was at my place and apparently her little dot just sat at my address for hours. Around 11, someone started pounding on my door. I knew that knock. She went white and whispered his name. I opened the door halfway and there he was with his phone in his hand, staring at the screen. He pushed past me before I could say anything. That knock, you just know it's about to get messy when someone shows up like that. First thing he saw were her shoes kicked off next to mine by the door. Then he looked down the hall and there she was, standing there in one of my old t-shirts. Nobody said anything for what felt like forever. I could hear my heart beating. Finally, he asked how long it had been going on. I told him 3 weeks. He made this weird laughing sound and looked at her. He said something about her moving on fast. She told him it wasn't about moving on, it was about getting away from someone who spied on her. That hit harder than anything I could have said. He didn't yell or punch anything like I expected. He just pulled out his phone, took a picture of us standing there and left. 10 minutes later, that photo was in our group chat with the caption, "Guess who's been playing therapist?" Posting the photo in the group chat? That's just brutal, like airing everyone's business at once. By the next morning, half our friends had texted me some version of, "What the hell, man?" The other half just went silent, which somehow felt worse. Group hangouts stopped. People stopped responding to memes. Our whole social world just ended. After the dust settled, she and I had to figure out if we were actually together, or just two guilty people who'd blown up their lives for nothing. We decided to try making it real, but I knew I needed to at least attempt an apology. I wrote him a long text admitting I'd screwed up as a friend, but also pointing out that tracking someone's phone isn't exactly healthy relationship behaviour. He never responded. The first year was rough. Every fight felt like proof we were doomed. She had trust issues from the whole tracking thing. I kept waiting for karma to hit us. We moved across town partly to avoid running into people, partly for a fresh start. The waiting for karma anxiety must be exhausting. Hard to be happy when you're constantly expecting everything to blow up. 3 years later, we're still together. Most of our old friend group is history, though 2 people eventually reached out for coffee. He blocked us both on everything, which is probably for the best. Son. Do I regret how it all went down? Yeah, I was a terrible friend. But do I regret being with her? Not even close. She's happier now than I ever saw her when they were together, and honestly so am I. Sometimes you have to burn everything down to figure out where you actually belong. Messy start, but it worked out. Sometimes you really do have to blow everything up to find what actually makes you happy. Story 3. I fell for my best friend, and almost lost her to her toxic ex. 8 years of friendship with her, and I never thought we'd end up here. Her boyfriend had just dumped her after 3 years of checking her texts and making snide comments every time she hung out with me. She couldn't stand being in their old apartment alone, so she started crashing on my couch most nights. 2 weeks in, we were half awake watching some Netflix show when she nodded off against my shoulder. When she woke up around midnight, we were really close and it just happened. We both said it was just comfort, wouldn't happen again. It happened 3 more times that month. That's when her ex started his campaign. He'd show up at her gym, accidentally bump into her at the grocery store, text her friends asking if she was okay. Each time she'd get rattled and end up back at my place. I kept thinking a real conversation about what we were doing would ruin our friendship, so I avoided it. Then our mutual friends started noticing. At Sarah's birthday party, he showed up uninvited. She spent the whole night glued to my side while he stared us down from across the room. My buddy Jake straight up asked if we were hooking up. I lied to his face even though her toothbrush was sitting on my bathroom counter. That toothbrush on your sink is basically glowing neon. Lying there must have singed a little. The breaking point came when he pounded on her apartment door while we were eating Chinese takeout. She panicked and begged me to stay over. While she was in the shower, his messages kept lighting up her phone on the counter. Long apologies, heart emojis, the whole playbook. When I told her he was manipulating her, she snapped that I didn't understand their history. Next morning, I finally said it. I told her I had real feelings and couldn't keep being her emotional safety net while she figured out her ex situation. She started crying, said she was confused about everything and needed space to think. 3 weeks of silence. Then I saw an Instagram post of them at dinner together, and my stomach dropped through the floor. I thought I'd lost her completely. Getting sucker punched by your own feed. Nothing like an unexpected couple photo to knock the wind out of you. A week later, she showed up at my door at 1 a.m, soaked from the rain. She said she'd tried giving him another chance, but it lasted exactly 1 dinner before he grabbed her phone to check something. That's when she realised what everyone had been trying to tell her. She admitted she'd been using me as a crutch to avoid dealing with her actual feelings. She'd blocked him on everything and asked if there was any chance we could try this for real. I told her we'd have to date like normal people. No more crisis hookups, no more pretending nothing happened the next day. She agreed and even started seeing a therapist to work through the whole mess. Finally putting up actual walls instead of just hoping for the best. That hits different. We took it painfully slow for the first few months. Actual dates, no sleepovers, figuring out if we worked as more than friends. It was awkward at first, like learning to walk again. Our friend group thought it was hilarious how formal we were being after months of obvious tension. The ex tried reaching out a few more times through mutual friends, but she shut it down hard each time. Eventually he gave up and moved across town. Last I heard, he was pulling the same controlling routine with someone new. Same toxic playbook, different victim. I guess the bullet was officially dodged. We've been together over a year now. She officially moved in 3 months ago, and our friends all claim they saw it coming from day one, which still annoys us both. Sometimes I find random reminders of her old relationship stuff she'd forgotten about, and she just tosses them without the drama. Turns out, hooking up with your best friend can work, but only if you're both willing to stop lying to yourselves about what you actually want. 8 years to get here, but damn if it wasn't worth the wait. Story 4. I stayed over at my best friend's place and almost lost him forever. My best friend and I had this thing called the emergency protocol. Whenever one of us got dumped or had a dating disaster, the other would show up with cheap ice cream and the worst movie we could find. It worked for 10 years until the night it spectacularly backfired. At our friend's wedding last spring, we got way too drunk during the reception. Back at my place, we were making fun of the cheesy vows when suddenly we were kissing. Then we were stumbling toward my bedroom. The whole thing was awkward and clumsy, nothing like the movies. We woke up the next morning, looked at each other, and both started talking at the same time about how we needed coffee and aspirin. He was out the door in 10 minutes. For weeks afterward, our daily texting dropped to maybe one message every few days. He started cancelling our Wednesday movie nights, claiming work emergencies. At group hangouts, we'd sit on opposite sides of the room like we were allergic to each other. When someone finally asked if we were fighting, we both just shrugged and changed the subject. The breaking point was our annual camping trip. He texted 2 days before saying his car was in the shop. I knew he was lying because I'd seen him driving it the day before at a gas station. We made eye contact through the window and he just drove away. Watching him speed off like he just got caught shoplifting feelings. Ugh, that sting hits deeper than the busted car excuse. 3 weeks later, our mutual friend Sarah mentioned she'd set him up with someone from her office. They'd apparently hit it off. I went home, downloaded a dating app, and swiped through exactly 4 profiles before deleting it and crying in my kitchen. That's when I knew I had to fix this mess. I showed up at his apartment unannounced. We made painful small talk about the weather for 10 minutes before I finally said we needed to address what happened. He looked relieved but defensive. He admitted he'd gone on a couple dates with Sarah's co-worker but said it wasn't going anywhere. I told him he was using some random woman to avoid dealing with our situation. He got angry and said I'd been avoiding him just as much, which was fair. The fight escalated until he said maybe our friendship was already over and we should just accept it. I left feeling sick. Maybe it's already over is the verbal equivalent of pulling the fire alarm during finals. Panic everywhere, no clear exit. 2 weeks of complete silence followed. Sarah told me he'd stopped seeing the other woman. Our friend group was getting weird about it. People were picking sides without even knowing what happened. Finally, he texted asking if we could try talking again, somewhere neutral. We met at the diner where we used to study in high school. This time we skipped the small talk. He said the hookup wasn't a mistake, but it had confused the hell out of him because he'd never thought about me that way before. Suddenly he was, and he panicked about losing our friendship over new feelings he didn't understand. I told him I'd been just as confused and scared, but I'd interpreted his silence as regret. Air finally moving in the diner. Messy truths, but at least everyone can breathe again. We decided to try rebuilding our friendship first, but it was harder than we expected. The first movie night back was so awkward we actually turned it off halfway through and he left. Our first attempt at coffee was just painful silence until I made some excuse about needing to get home. He texted later saying this was harder than he thought it would be. It took about 2 months of genuinely awful hangouts before things started feeling normal again. We had to relearn how to be around each other. The breakthrough was when we were at another friend's birthday party and instinctively started roasting the terrible karaoke performances together like old times. That felt like us again. Trading snark over off-key Beyoncé. Friendship pulse found clear. Once we were sure the friendship was solid, he asked me on an actual date. We've been together 3 years now and just moved in together. We still do the emergency protocol for bad days, except now we share the ice cream and usually end up making out during the terrible movie. Took almost ruining a decade of friendship to figure out we actually worked better as more than friends. But the whole disaster taught us how to communicate when things get complicated. Emergency Protocol 2.0, same ice cream, upgraded ending. Turns out the best rescue plan was each other all along. Story 5. I helped my best friend practice dating, and we accidentally fell in love. My best friend and I were both going through rough patches with dating last year. She'd been crushing on this guy from her office for months, but could never work up the nerve to actually talk to him beyond work stuff. I was coming off a string of awkward first dates where I apparently had all the charm of wet cardboard. One night we were complaining about it over drinks, and she mentioned how her therapist had her practice job interviews to deal with anxiety. She joked that maybe we should practice dating conversations the same way, since we were both clearly terrible at it. I laughed it off, but she kept bringing it up over the next few days. Eventually I agreed to help her practice talking to guys in low-pressure situations. We'd go places where she might run into people, and I'd give her feedback on how she came across. Nothing formal, just hanging out while she worked on being more confident. The first couple times were disasters. She'd either clam up completely or launch into these rehearsed topics that sounded like she was conducting interviews. But gradually she started relaxing, and our practice sessions turned into just regular hanging out. We'd grab coffee or walk around downtown, and she'd actually talk to people naturally. It's wild how just practice can turn into accidental date nights before anyone catches on. Then something weird started happening. She stopped mentioning the office guy. When I brought him up, she'd just shrug and change the subject. Meanwhile, I realised I was looking forward to our practice sessions way more than any actual dates I'd been on. The shift became obvious when we were at this trivia night downtown. A woman at the bar kept buying me drinks and trying to start conversations. Instead of my friend coaching me through it like we'd planned, she got quiet and suggested we leave early. Walking back to the car, she made some comment about how the woman seemed fake and was probably just looking for a hookup. Oh, she is not handling this well at all. I pointed out that she was supposed to be helping me practice, not critiquing every woman who talked to me. She got defensive and said she was just looking out for me, but something felt off about the whole thing. Things got tense after that. Our hangouts felt different somehow, like there was this undercurrent of something we weren't talking about. She'd text me random stuff throughout the day that had nothing to do with dating practice. I caught myself getting annoyed when guys would approach her at coffee shops, which made no sense since that was supposedly the whole point. The feelings are practically neon at this point. The breaking point came when a woman from my office asked me out. I was actually excited to test what I'd been working on, but when I told my friend about it, her reaction was immediate and intense. She asked why I was bailing on our arrangement for some random person I barely knew. That's when it hit me that we'd been lying to ourselves. The whole practice dating thing had become an excuse to spend time together without admitting what was really happening. When I called her out on it, she finally admitted she'd stopped thinking about the office guy weeks ago. I told her I felt the same way, but had been too scared to mess up our friendship. We ended up cancelling my date and just talking until like 3 in the morning about how we'd managed to trick ourselves into this situation. We've been together for about 1.5 years now. The office guy actually asked her out a few months later, and she turned him down without even thinking about it. We still joke about our terrible dating practice sessions, but honestly, we probably needed that excuse to figure out what was already there. From mock interviews to mutual exclusives, turns out the best rehearsal was for the real relationship all along. Story 6. I started a situationship with my best friend and it almost destroyed us. My best friend and I moved in together after college because we were both broke and already hung out constantly anyway. She's one of those super organised people who colour codes everything. I'm the guy who leaves cereal bowls on the coffee table for 3 days. Everything changed on a random Thursday night. We both had terrible days at work, so we grabbed some cheap wine and ended up on the couch complaining about our bosses. One thing led to another, and we hooked up. The next morning was awkward as hell until we decided to keep things casual. Just physical, no strings attached. We could both see other people. Seemed mature at the time. Within a couple weeks I started getting weird about stuff. Like when she mentioned getting drinks with some guy from her office, I felt this knot in my stomach I couldn't explain. I'd notice when she got dressed up to go out and wonder if it was a date. I even went on a few dates myself to prove I was fine with our arrangement, but I spent the whole time thinking about her. Oh no, that stomach knot is never a good sign when you're supposed to be casual. The breaking point came about 2 months in. I got home from work one Friday and heard her laughing in her room with some guy. My heart just dropped. I stood in the hallway for a minute trying to convince myself I didn't care, but my hands were actually shaking. When they came out, she introduced him as someone from her yoga class. Nice guy, no idea about our situation. I was so cold and weird that he left pretty quickly. Standing in that hallway with shaking hands, that's when the whole no feelings thing completely falls apart. After he left, she asked what my problem was. I tried to play it off, but she wasn't having it. She reminded me we'd agreed we could see other people. That's when I lost it and told her I couldn't do casual anymore because I was in love with her. She just stared at me for the longest time, then said she needed to think and went to stay at her sister's place for the weekend. Those 3 days were torture. I was convinced I'd ruined everything. When she came back, she told me she'd been seeing the yoga guy for a few weeks and had feelings for him, but my confession had messed with her head. We had these painful conversations over the next month where we tried to figure out what to do. Living together while having these conversations must be absolutely miserable. She ended things with the other guy but said she needed space to sort out her feelings. We basically became polite strangers living in the same apartment. It was miserable. We'd pass each other in the kitchen and barely make eye contact. After about 6 weeks of this torture, I was making dinner and couldn't find our good pan. I finally broke down and texted her, even though she was literally in the next room asking where it was. She texted back that it was in the pantry and that we needed to talk. We sat at the kitchen table and she admitted she'd broken up with Yoga Guy because she couldn't stop thinking about what I'd said. She said maybe she'd been dating him to avoid dealing with her own feelings about us. Finally, some actual honesty instead of tiptoeing around each other. We decided to try dating for real, but it took months to get back to normal. We had to learn how to be honest about jealousy and not pretend we were above having feelings. That was 2 years ago. We're still together and just moved to a bigger place. She still organises everything and I still leave dishes around. But now, when she finds a mouldy coffee mug I forgot about, she just sighs and asks if I want to grab dinner after I wash it. We fight sometimes, but we talk it out instead of pretending everything's fine. Turns out the friends with benefits thing only works if you don't actually care about the person, which we definitely did. At least now the messy dishes and messy feelings are both out in the open. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe and check out this video next.